from as many directions as possible. So anyway, we're still on the Pine series. So difficult to teach. Well, one of the books I was reading, they were talking about 64 techniques, I think it was 64, that was described. Well, they didn't describe the technique, but they said about 64. Well, I was reading one of the books early in my career. They had described the 12 techniques, and I couldn't figure it out. So I'm having the same trouble trying to explain what I'm doing. Because I've done so many, I know how to do it, but I'm trying to figure out how to explain it all to you. That's why I'm doing so many in the Pine series. Elms and junipers, they're more or less straightforward. But the pine has so many variations that it's really difficult for me to teach and shoot video effectively. So as always, before getting started, today is the first week in December, and you can see the candles are right about the same length. There's nothing that's protruding any further than others. That means that at least this tree is in balance. Now we also need to thin it out, because if we kept it like this, those clusters of candles will start to make this bushy higher. I think in the past I explained to you that I'm in Central California and we're in Zone 9. So most of these heavy pruning I do in the fall, mainly because I need to wear a long sleeve. But also, because of our extremely hot summers, I have to make sure that I have foliage protecting the trunk. So if you notice in the beginning, this one is all bushy and it's hard to see the trunk. Well, if it's hard for you to see the trunk, that means that it's hard for the trunk to get sunburned. That's why I have to do mine different than, let's say, if you were from Los Angeles. Well, when I learned this, I learned it from Mr. Yamashita in Los Angeles. And at that time, we just did it in spring, which is fine, except that here, because of our extreme summers, if you do it in spring and it doesn't recover fast enough, then you end up with a burnt trunk. I know that I'm getting followers from all over the world, and it's really difficult to actually help you with great information, because it's hard enough just to talk about the difference in California, Southern California, Northern California, and then even in this Northern California, we were talking, I think, in one of my chapters about people from Chico. Well, Chico and our Newcastle here have about the same temperature in terms of highs, but they don't get the delta breeze. So, we have all these little differences that make it difficult to actually give you a blanket rule about what needs to get done. Okay, the other day I got a question from one of my subscribers. Do I have a private collection? No. Everything you see is what I have. And I did not get into this as a hobby. I've always thought about it as a business. So in business, you don't want to have like a private collection. Everything is here for sale. Now, it's Not to say that there are not some favorites. If you come in here and one or two of the trees might have an extremely high price, well, the high price might mean that I am very fond of it. But other than that, no. I do not have my own private collection. I don't do shows because in order to do shows, you gotta have your private collection. And the private collection is not contrary to running a business. At least that's my theory. Okay, let's get down lower now. Some of these are sacrifice branches, and when I get done pruning, I'll evaluate, because the sacrifice branches has to be removed. If you wait too long, you end up with a big scar that sometimes is very difficult to heal. But if you take it off too soon, it will not accomplish what you're trying to do, which was to fatten that area. So, but I won't know till I get a little bit further along. Okay, so you notice that today I'm in the studio, and then luckily this is a big tree, but something that I could still manage to put on a turntable. Actually, this big turntable, one of my students, Art, he gave it to me. Well, I guess he found it someplace, but he found that it's awfully big. And I only use it when I'm doing something like this. So anyway, it was a gift from Art. Art and Mark has been with me the longest. They were here, I think, the first year that I started the business. So I have a question about this one here. See how it's starting to come up? Now, is this a sacrifice branch, or is it going to be a permanent branch? If it's going to be permanent branch, I don't like it coming up. This being the lower branch, it should be going down, right? So what am I going to do? This is a tough camera angle, but you can see there's a line that comes this way, right? That's the one that's coming up. But if I cut it here, these branches are relatively flat, and they're actually manageable, so we could make them flatter. So I'm thinking of taking this thing off. So if this was pure sacrifice branch, no big deal. But if it's going to become permanent, or possibility of become permanent, I'm better off cutting this off and then let one of these ones that are more horizontal or slightly going down become the new leader. Okay, so there's always these things that you have to kind of constantly work out in your head. Well, that got rid of that problem. Now, is this finished? No. The one on the left, this could come off in the future. This could come off. That's my back branch. And that could come off. It depends on how it's going to be used. Now, if there was a big boulder that was placed, then this could come off and dropped in place. But anyway, a lot of these are dependent on how the garden design evolves. It's one of the components, and I think I told you in the past that Mr. Yamashita was the one that got me started in pruning pines. Oh, I was a young 20-some-odd kid. Anyway, he taught me, and he happened to be a landscape contractor, I think. He was a landscape contractor, and he said, keep the lower branches. He didn't say for sacrifice, but he says, you know, you can always take it off, but you can't put it back. So anyway, that's what I've always done. I started thinking in terms of the fattening process, so the sacrifice branch. But I always remember what Mr. Yamashita taught me. So anyway, I'll trim up a few more and then we'll conclude this chapter. Isn't it nice that I could bring it inside and turn it for you completely? That was the big problem I was having when I was shooting outside. Also, the sunlight was a factor. So if I could get it in here, this is the best way to shoot. But hey, these are getting really heavy. This is about the maximum size that I could move myself without help, or the tractor. And then the turntable, at least I have a big one that will accommodate. So anyway, this is Hiro saying goodbye. I'll see you again in another chapter. I think for the fall of 2020, this might be the last of the pines. And then hopefully again in spring or summer, we'll start to get into decandling and getting those branches more perfected. But anyway, this is Hiro saying goodbye. I'll see you again in another chapter real soon. So this was the Japanese black pine. Oh, I would say that maybe this is between 25 and maybe even 30.